Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is John Nori, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Our topic is a powerful idea for a productive student lunch. There are some things I need to do housekeeping-wise before we actually begin the content. Technical problems are addressed on your screen at this point. There's a toll-free number you can call if you're having any difficulties, and you need to have that webinar ID 440-024-171. I'll give you a moment to jot that down. If you have a technical problem, call 855-352-9002 and give them that webinar ID number, please. We are on Twitter at NASSP, and hashtag is NASSP webinar. NASSP is also, of course, on Facebook at facebook.com/principals, and the website appears on your screen. If you are interested in a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you can go to that address. It's the bottom of your slide, nassp.org/webinar completed. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Jane Elsperman is president of NASSP and a school leader with 25 years of experience at elementary, middle, and high school levels. She was named the 2014 Florida High School Principal of the Year and the 2015 National Principal of the Year. Brad Staley, our other presenter for today, is principal of Richlands High School in Richlands, North Carolina, and the former assistant principal of Northside High School, where he oversaw the highest growth and proficiency increases in the school's history. He was selected as the 2015 Assistant Principal of the Year for both Onslow County and North Carolina. During the webinar today, the presenters invite your questions. Please submit them using the question box on your GoToWebinar panel. We will respond to those questions as time permits at the end of the webinar, and if we run out of time, we'll answer questions via email following the webinar. At this time, I'm going to turn the controls over to Jane so that we can begin the content of the webinar.
Okay. Thank you, John. I am going to go ahead and try to advance the slide to kind of tell you a little bit about Westport High School. Westport High School, and John, you might want to go ahead and advance that slide for me.
Jane, you can do it now. I had not done the check mark. Now you can do it. There you
go.
Go.
Right. Okay. Westport High School is located in Ocala, Florida, and Ocala, Florida is in the center of the state of Florida, about an hour and a half north of Orlando, an hour and a half away from Daytona Beach. We're just right in the middle of the state. It's a rural school with a lot of students. We're 63% free and reduced lunch, 65% minority. We do have a 97% graduation rate. For the last 5 years, we were graded as an A school the last 5 years that I was there, and also had several other recognitions. And truly, none of this would have occurred had we not introduced Power Hour 6 years ago. And so during the webinar, I'll be sharing with you, along with Brad, about the journey that we had over the last 6 years and the benefits that it had to our schools, especially helping our students who were most at risk, those students who had the greatest need for additional support, as well as our high-achieving students, to really help everyone maximize their academic potential and create great opportunities for socialization for our students. And I'll go ahead and let Brad tell you a little bit about his school.
So I'll tell you a little bit about Richlands High School. Jane, thank you. This is the school I'm at right now. It's in Onslow County Schools, North Carolina, which is a little bit north of Wilmington, right on the coast. The school I'm in now has close to 1,000 students, and you can see not quite as high a minority rate, high graduation and attendance, and again, there's a few of our wards. But you'll also hear me talk a lot about Northside High School today, which is really where I got to know Power Hour. Northside High School is where I spent 4 years as the assistant principal over the last 4 years. And during our last year that I was there, we took, actually the last 2 years really, we took the journey through Power Hour. And just to echo what Jane said, the last year that I was there was the first year of Power Hour, and we immediately saw the highest growth in the school's history. And we also accredit that to Power Hour. So I'll spend, even though I'm at Richlands now, I will spend a lot of time today talking about my experiences at Northside.
Well, what initiated our look at Power Hour was we were searching for a way to increase our student achievement. We had been an underperforming school for many years, and our students, both at the high end, our advanced placement classes had very low enrollment. We were suffering with a really stagnant and low graduation rate. We wanted to increase rigor, and we wanted to do something to increase our school activities. I shared earlier that our school was extremely rural, so we had most of our students ride our school buses in, so they couldn't stay before school or after school. And we also struggled with our lunches. We had free lunches, and we couldn't provide the students with the opportunity to really focus on student achievement. So we started looking at the work of Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle, and we determined if we were going to change the way that we served our students, what was our purpose? Why were we going to do that? And we immediately came upon the realization that what was standing in our way was the way that was student grades. Students were failing. There was no opportunity for them to have any type of remediation, and that failure rate was causing students not to graduate. It goes hand in hand. And so what we began to do was I started looking at grades very differently because I have twin grandsons, and my twin grandsons both got bicycles for their 5th birthday. Austin got on the bike and rode it like he had ridden it his entire life. Ethan got on the bike and immediately fell off, pushed the bike away, said, "I can't do this. I can't ride a bike." Yet, with some practice, with some training wheels, now you can't tell which of them learned to ride the bike first. So we really started looking at what are we doing to help our students achieve academic success, knowing that if we're going to look at standards, if we're going to look at the way that we are grading our students, that time seemed to be the governing factor, not the mastery of the standards. So what we were going to do to provide students with the extra time that they needed to be successful, as well as help them move along. And so this is some of the things that we began to do as we looked at grading in particular, because that seemed to be our focus. So we had determined our purpose was to look at what are we going to do to improve grades, what are we going to do to improve access to more rigorous courses, what are we going to do to create opportunities for students to participate in school life. And Brad, do you want to share some of the things that led up to your implementation of Power Hour?
Sure. Thank you, Jane. We were in a little bit of a different place. We had seen over the 5 or 6 years leading into our Power Hour, we had seen an upward tick already as far as academics and attendance behavior. We had already been moving the school forward. We had a pretty thriving AVID program. Northside High School is a national AVID demonstration site, and we had a pretty thriving AP program. What our discussion was really centered on our lower population, our lower achieving group, and some of our at-risk students, because we were serving our middle students, what I feel like, very well with the AVID program. We were serving we had a lot of AIG type services in place for our higher students, but we talked about our lower population. And when we went into the why, when we started looking at this, we started with the why. And we really looked at three different reasons that we wanted to try to come up with some sort of power hour period or flexible period. And those three reasons were access. And when I say access, I mean access to programs where there was not access. And I'm speaking about, say, that there were things occurring after school like tutoring or clubs or activities, and we may have immediately lost some of our students who didn't have transportation or whose parents couldn't provide a ride for them. We also wanted to increase opportunities. So not just the access, but actually the number of things that we were able to offer. And specifically speaking to that in an academic setting, opportunities for remediation that did not exist, opportunities for enrichment that could not exist without a power hour period. And then flexibility, just the flexibility to have that hour during the day when we could offer these things, and having the flexibility to offer new programs or change programs. It really kind of opened up our world. So the access, the opportunity, and the flexibility were the why, and the driving force behind that was our lower population that we felt were probably a little bit underserved. And I'll say that the one thing that we really considered when we began looking at Power Hour was, when do we go? And we spent about a year looking at other programs, taking trips. We led up the band with our teacher leaders as well as the administration to some other schools and take a look at some programs. But we also had to address our staff's readiness for change. And we felt that the time was right. We had some staff members that were all about driving forward at that time. And we also had just gone through this big AVID process, which was a lot of change for our staff. So we felt that we were ripe for change. We were ready. The staff was ready for change. So again, the access, the opportunity, and the flexibility for our lower population is the driving force behind Northside's program.
Brad and Jane, this is John. I want to interrupt for just a second because I got a question that came up that I can't respond to without interrupting you. A gentleman says he can't hear anything in the broadcast, and I'd just like to ask somebody in the audience, if you can hear, would you just type in the question box, yes, I can hear this. Make sure we're not going out. Yep, okay, so others are hearing. So the gentleman who wrote, I can't hear it, it's something on your end. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Now I'll be quiet, Jane, and let you go back.
Okay. All right. Well, some of the challenges that we were dealing with, and Brad is so right. One of the things that you do have to make sure that on this journey, if you're going to look at doing something different with time in your school day, you really have to make sure that you have the buy-in and the participation of your teaching staff. In terms of Power Hour, you have to make sure that your cafeteria people are involved, your maintenance and custodial staff, because this really is it's a whole school change. The challenges that I mentioned that we were dealing with were the fact that we needed more time. We had to get more time in the day because we wanted students to be more successful. And the other issue that we had was with our school was a little bit smaller when we started it, and we had 3 lunch periods that prevented students from getting the help they needed during the school day, because the teachers very openly said students are welcome to come by my classroom during lunch and I'll be more than happy to help them. But if the teacher has A lunch and the students have B lunch, that doesn't help at all. We also had a situation where our very good-hearted teachers would say, well, if you need more time, you just stay here and finish that, and I'll write a pass for you to your next teacher, which then made the other teacher furious that the teachers were holding their student back as well. So that the good-heartedness of the teachers was getting in the way of and interfering with our students. We also had students that would take 3 lunches because for all little things, as they didn't have lunch with their friends, they did go get help from a teacher who didn't know that that child did not have that particular period for lunch. So there were all different things that were coming into play that were going on campus that the teachers wanted to be able to address. We also had a situation where we had, when we were discussing this process, and now it was 7 years ago when we began the conversation, that when we were discussing the process, we had 1,800 students, and we had a cafeteria that had seating for 500 students. And that posed a problem because that year with 1,800 students, we had literally a pressure cooker in our cafeteria because we were putting 600 students into an area that fit 500 comfortably. There were all kinds of issues with what do students do when they have 30 minutes for lunch and they finish lunch in 10 minutes and they have nothing to do? They can get into all kinds of mischief. We also knew that our school was growing and we were looking at 2,000 students the following year. So where are we going to put these students? And then the other issue that we had to look at was, how do you get the extra time in the school day? Because with 3 lunches, we had 5 minutes on either side of that 30-minute lunch. We had 5 minutes between the 3 lunches, which gave us 50 minutes. And we ended up asking the district for 5 minutes to have the students come dropped off by the buses 5 minutes early and picked up 5 minutes later, which allowed us to build that extra 10 minutes into our lunch period. And I know that that Brad had to do some logistics as well in terms of building that time into his school schedule.
Yeah, we sure did. We were very limited at the beginning of this conversation with what we could do with schedules because our start and end times from our district were concrete because we shared buses with our elementary school. So they had to leave at a specific time. That, and we also offer a district-wide online class schedule that was our first and second period. So our bell schedule, first and second period, had to line up with those of the other 6 high schools in our district because all of those kids sat in a live environment online and took the class together. So we had we really had to get creative. We had to get our district to work with us on give and take on some of these times, and it ended up working out in the end. It worked out beautifully, but we had probably 6 or 7 good changes as far as the bell schedule went. Obviously, before we actually launched over the summer, we went through 6 or 7 revisions of the bell schedule, trying to get those logistics just right.
Yeah, and our logistics were the same reason because we do share buses with elementary and middle schools in our district. I think that the other thing that that we looked at as well when we built the schedule, if you're used to scheduling a school, the way that our schedule actually looks is it looks on the schedule as a 60-minute class change. So you can see that there's 5 minutes between each of the classes, and we run a hybrid schedule. We do all different kinds of things with time. And on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we run a 6-period day. On Thursday and Friday, we run a 3-block day so that the students see their teachers in first, third, and fifth period on Thursday and second, fourth, and sixth period on Friday. So Power Hour is slightly different on whether we're running a straight 6 day or a block day, but on the actual scheduler, it looks like a 60-minute class change because our students are not assigned to a teacher during Power Hour. I'm not quite sure how you do that, Brad.
We were on a straight standard 4x4 block, so it looked, as far as the way to make it work, it was simple because our days all looked the same. So we would run, and we kind of tried to decide, do we want to run first block, second block, then Power Hour, or do we want to run 3 blocks in Power Hour? We decided for our specifics to run 3 blocks and then Power Hour, and what that allowed, we had a significant number of senior students that were on what we call the Career and College Promise program, where they were over at the community college taking a class, or some with early release or an internship. We had a large number of seniors that would leave our campus, and we felt like if we had Power Hour right there at the end, they could get their lunch, go to tutoring, whatever they had to do, and then leave the campus, and it was nice and clean for us. and we even were able to offer a senior seminar for them. One day a week, and I think we actually upped it to 2 days a week, our seniors would stay with their senior advisor in homerooms because in our county, part of the graduation requirement is a senior project, a graduation project. So that gave them, it was a beautiful setup because it allowed them time to work with their advisor, kind of uninterrupted, unadulterated time, and then those students could either choose to stay for lunch or they could head on out half an hour earlier than the prior schedule allowed out to their internships or their jobs or their college classes. So the start and end times worked pretty well, and the bell schedule worked pretty well. The 4x4 block Power Hour fits right in there just fine.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jane. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that we really had to look at too was just trying to figure out. And this is as we went through the process in the summer, we polled the teachers quite often to say, here's what we're thinking about. Give us some comments, and they were all about putting this period in, but they were not all about losing instructional time, obviously. So that was one of the big challenges. How do you keep the start and end times the same, add this hour, and still not take away any time? Because, like you said, our previous lunches were a half an hour. So it was a big puzzle. It took a lot of feedback and a lot of revisions, because it takes a big team, because we had, obviously our teachers were on the team, our administrators, our district level administrators, our online facilitators, all those people were part of this scheduling team, but with a little persistence we were able to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we did was and again, looking for teacher buy-in, we did a very unstructured Power Hour, and it's been unstructured from day one, and here we are in the 6th year and it's still unstructured. Our teachers, they get to select which half of Power Hour they would like for their duty-free lunch, because we do have a union-mandated teacher, their teacher lunch is duty-free. So we've got a union-mandated duty-free lunch for teachers. So our teachers, very simply, at the beginning of the year, I would just give them, ask them to take out a Post-it note, and they would put their name on either the left side of the paper or the right side of the paper, and they themselves would make it look so that it would balance. They could check and see whether or not they've got about half of them, and they worked on that themselves. And whatever they put up there would be our schedule for their lunch, and it was really interesting the way that always seems to work out. They, departments would do that so that they could have lunch together. Some departments would split it so that they could have some teachers available for support of the students and some others. So our teachers really have a lot of control in setting that schedule so that they have that ownership of that time. We're very fortunate that our teachers do not have any type of duty during Power Hour. They are in their classrooms either to provide support, to offer AP study sessions, or have some type of club that they sponsor. Our coaches, they use that time to have their students study plays, watch film. They issue uniforms. They do a lot of that housekeeping work that they normally would take up practice time to do. Or if they have students whose grades are a little bit questionable, those coaches make sure that they encourage their students and maybe even help them find that teacher that they need to spend some more time with. So we have the teachers pick which half of the lunch that they would like, and then the students have full control over how many activities they want to participate in during Power Hour, or none at all. We have students who work. We have migrant students who work, some of them before they come to school. We have students that work late, stocking shelves at Walmart, or they work on the farms in our area, and some of them, they just need to rest during Power Hour. And it's not, you have to kind of get used to the idea that there might be students who are taking a nap, there might be students who are who are so totally engaged that they're literally, they might end up going to 4 different teachers during that time. But it is, it's more structured for the teachers, and then the students choose their activities. We do not assign anyone activities. However, if we have a student who really needs to see a teacher who isn't, we'll talk a little bit later about how we make that happen. But it is a little bit more unstructured. And I know, Brad, when you built yours, you built a little bit more structure into yours. You might want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, we sure did. And for everybody here, Jane and I had a great conversation the other day about how the version of Power Hour that she used with her school and the version of Power Hour we used with my school have a lot of similarities but some differences as well. But it works. It worked at hers. It worked at ours. And every school that we've gone to look at a model, everything was just a little bit different. So what we did was we kind of took some examples from multiple schools that we looked at, and we did a hybrid model. Ours is considerably more structured. The teachers still, in our model, got a 30-minute duty-free lunch, but one of the feedback pieces that we got from our teachers was that, hey, if we're going to be able to take a 30-minute duty-free lunch, which represented a great increase from what we had because before they were having to split up lunch duties. So this was great. Teachers loved the fact that they got a 30-minute duty-free lunch. They said, hey, can you try to schedule us so that we all have lunch together as a department? So we did that for them. So instead of being able to choose, we kind of let them choose as a group. So, and then I would say, do you want the first half or the second half? So we structured it that way, so it was set by department. For the students, it was very, very structured, but there were some freedoms built in. So the students were allowed to choose absolutely which lunch they wanted to go to and which activity they wanted to do, our clubs. One of the other differences in our model is that we also had the gym, the weight room, the track open, so our kids could get 30 minutes to an hour, and a lot of them used the whole hour of physical activity, which was, I mean, a great thing for our kids just to go, exert some energy and get outside. But what we did at our school was also mandated tutoring for some students. So on certain days, and we made sure that no student had to be somewhere more than a couple or 3 days a week, they would have to go to tutoring, and they were accountable. The teachers were accountable and the students were accountable for getting those students to the tutoring sessions. And the other thing that we really encouraged kids, and I won't say that we mandated it, but we encouraged kids to participate in something, not to just sit and lunch the entire hour. We wanted them to take advantage because, again, we based our entire Power Hour program on the opportunity piece and just wanting to be able to offer those additional things. And if we were offering those, we wanted the kids to participate. So we really encouraged, I won't say mandated, but encouraged the students to only do lunch for 30 minutes and then to go make sure that they were active in something. Along with opening the gym and the track and the weight room, we also had common areas open. Our media center skyrocketed. We actually had to set some limits in some of these places because the kids were flooding to them and using all these resources. It was actually a great outcome. And we never thought for a million years when we were doing this that we would have to set a limit on how many students could be in some of these areas, but we did, and that was great. So even in just a little bit more structure, we were still able to provide some of those things like the duty-free lunch and some of those freedoms for the kids, but while still mandating some accountability as far as tutoring on our end.
One of the other things that we found after a couple of years is as time went on, teachers would actually, when given the chance to choose first or second half, we had a large contingent of teachers that created a third category, which was open the entire time. And we had a lot of teachers that just liked that flexibility, that they would eat lunch, the students would come in, they might have a scheduled tutoring time, but other students could come in and get additional support or help, or that would allow them to have a club meeting as well as have a tutoring session. So we had a large contingent of teachers that began doing that, and it really was something that just happened because they found that it was to their liking to be able to do that. It wasn't something that was I think that the culture of the school is accepting of teachers who did do that, as well as those teachers that still chose to have a lunch by themselves. One of the things that
I'm sorry, I didn't step up.
Go ahead, Brad.
That was us as well. We found out shortly after that I had teachers going, we love this time. I want to be able to offer more. I know I have to do math tutoring with these students at this time, but can I also offer a club in the second half, and I'll just eat my lunch? So we found the same thing that happened with our teachers, is that they wanted to open up, and so I'd say we had at any given time a good quarter or a third of the staff that was open the entire hour.
Yeah, and I think that's because they're really, truly, they are given control over that hour of their day. And if you think about the teacher day and how scheduled it is, we tell them, they come in and the bells ring, and just like the children, the bells are ringing. And I think that when teachers have that control over their time, that does give them that flexibility, that they do feel open to doing more for the students. And one of the other things that, in thinking about Power Hour for the students, one of the unique things that I have had this revelation about high school is that it's the most social time in a young person's life, yet school is the last place that they have to actually socialize with their friends. Our students, for example, they come in on the bus, they go straight to breakfast, they go to lunch, and they will go to breakfast, then they go to first period, 5 minutes, second period, 5 minutes, third period, 5 minutes. Then they would go to whichever A, B, C lunch, and then the day rolls through, and then the bell rings, and they get back on the bus. And to think about that socialization time, that time for students to actually have lunch with their friends, to be able to talk to one another, to be able to work on a class project. And you think about teachers that want to have students to have an opportunity to work on a group project. Well, for most students, the ability to actually do that is limited by the ability they have to do things with each other after school, and this just provided so much for our students. We allowed our students to eat anywhere on campus. There are a couple of limitations. We don't like students eating in a lab because the keyboards get yucky, and our students do not eat in our media center. They do eat in a room adjacent to the media center. We have that room open, but they can eat anywhere on campus. The only investment we had to make was additional trash cans for those common areas so that the students would have a place to put their trash, as well as we had more recycling cans put in. But our students can eat anywhere on campus, and the big blessing that we found was also with our special education students, that opportunity for extended time for them to go and have either the extended time to work on a classroom assignment, extended time for testing. Those are all things that could be very easily managed during Power Hour.
We found a lot of similarities. We were reasonably concerned after having visited a couple of other schools about trash management, and we found out very quickly that our kids handled it very well. Our custodians were more than obliged, again, with trash cans, and so we had no issues on that. I want to go back to the social piece that you were talking about, and it's just absolutely true that we structure the day so much for them that they don't have time, and they may not even see their best friends the whole school day if they don't have a class and don't share lunch. So that was one of the most powerful things that happened as far as on that socialization end. Of course, we had other reasons to drive ours. I mean, we started it for other reasons, but one of the kind of the hidden benefits, all the kids had the same lunch, and it was a good time for them to meet up with those friends and have that social piece, that very important, very, very developmentally important social piece. That's why we loved having our gym and our track and our media center open, because there was a place, whether they were athletic or they wanted to play on the computer or they wanted to do whatever socially, there was an outlet for each one of those interests, and those kids could go do that together. And that was indeed that was a powerful outcome that we had.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things that we had to really think about was the rollout, because we planned this for a year, but then we started on day one of the school year. And so I think that became a little bit of a challenge. Once we had the structure put in place, we had to think of a couple of things that we hadn't planned for. And these are things that are going to come about in any time you roll out a change in schedule. We had all of the AP teachers, of course, wanted their students every single day because that was extra time, and they were all extremely excited about having more time with their students. So we had to tell AP teachers that they couldn't have their teachers, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week, that we were going to have to structure a schedule. So we came up with a schedule that included the teachers that had specific ongoing, either an extended instructional time like our AP teachers would do, or as well as with clubs. We couldn't have all the clubs on the second half of Power Hour on Tuesday. So we had our activities director as well as the teachers work together to come up with a schedule so that we could spread all of those activities around so that you could have students that were in student government and National Honor Society and Key Club, that they would all be able to attend those different club activities and be able to do a lot of different things within that school day. One of the things that we also had I'll just never forget the day before. It was the last day of pre-planning. It was the school was going to start on Monday. This was on Friday, and two teachers off to the side said, "Gosh, don't you want to be a fly on the wall when 2,000 kids hit that cafeteria at the same time on the first day of school?" And I thought about that and immediately realized we didn't have a very good plan. And so I asked the teachers to, when they came in, I said that we had one more bit of business for the implementation of Power Hour, and we had to come up with a way that we would be able to somehow stagger the students coming to the cafeteria. And so I asked the teachers to talk among themselves, and after a few minutes started taking ideas. And the senior teachers immediately said, "Listen, we'll keep our students back a little bit and we'll talk to them about the responsibility of being good role models, that Power Hour is a privilege and they have the responsibility to be able to keep the school clean, make sure that students behave and they use the time for academic purposes." And then the junior teachers said, "Hey, we said the same thing. We'll keep the kids back, the older students back for a few minutes and explain to them that they don't need to rush to the cafeteria, that the cafeteria will be open for the whole hour, and that they need to probably wait till the second half." And then, and I thought, well, that was great because that takes about 1,000 students out of rushing to the cafeteria when the bell rings. But then other teachers started saying, well, we talked in our group about doing something where we could bring together students and maybe have like an activity fair or something where we could tell them about all of the different clubs that they could belong and maybe take ideas for clubs that they might be interested in having. And our athletic coaches, they said, well, we can also have an open, we can be open in the gym and we could allow students to come in and talk to us about winter and spring sports and have applications there, the forms for their physicals. And so what ended up happening is that our teachers came up with this concept of an athletic and academic fair that gave students something to do so that everybody didn't go to the cafeteria right at the beginning of Power Hour that very first day. And what was interesting is that concept of that academic and, the activity and athletic fair continued on for several years where students could go in, get forms, sign up for clubs that first week of school. And it really allows for a smooth first day of, while students are getting their bearing on what were they going to do that first day or so of school when they had that whole hour. And Brad, I know you had to work with your students on how to address that opportunity of Power Hour.
We sure did. And, you know, even going back to how we got the staff ready for the rollout, we, the last 6 or 8 weeks before the school year let out the year before we went to Power Hour, and we had done all the research and we had decided as a staff we were going to move forward, we started going ahead and getting some feedback from the teachers, like you talked about, letting the teachers make some choices. And so throughout the summer, we kind of went through a teacher feedback revision cycle. So, you know, I'd get all the feedback from the teachers, send it out to them, ask for some feedback, and then we'd tweak until we finally got to something we could all agree with. We did something, you know, a little different. We were ready for the first staff meeting for the teachers when they came back in the summer to say, here it is. This is the, you know, the work that you've been doing for the last year, year and a half. We're going to be ready to go, but we didn't go day one. We decided to hold off, and we didn't even put a time limit on it necessarily. We didn't say we're going to start Power Hour on day 10 of the school year, day 20 of the school year. We said we'll start when we feel ready, when everybody feels like the kids have a good grasp on it. So I created, for the first 10 days of school, we ran an advisory period, and that's something we do to help with our head count anyway. And during that advisory time, 20-25 minutes, we did a lesson with the students on Power Hour. And it was a structured lesson. Teacher had a lesson plan that I provided to them, and they said, okay, today we're going to talk about Power Hour choices. And they got the master schedule out, and the kids had a 10-day plan. And the teachers filled out with them, what do you want to do the first 10 days? And that's where we addressed the not all rush into lunch at one time. So, and then the next day we talked about, you know, where we could eat, where we could not eat, and some of the structural things. So for the first 10 days of our school year, the teachers had some lessons they went through with the kids. Then right before we decided, you know, we all decided to have, okay, Monday morning, we're ready. So that previous Friday or that previous Thursday, I met personally with all the grade levels, had a presentation for them and said, you know, it was almost a pep rally. We're excited. We're ready to go. I hope you guys are, you know, are excited as like we are, and that you're ready to take advantage. So, and then we gave them some of the structure. I met with them, and in concurrence with that, we were using all of our media outlets, robocalls and reminds and things like that for the parents, because this is a cultural shift, and it's not just a cultural shift with the students, it's with the teachers and the administrators and the parents. When the parents show up on your campus and there are 800 kids outside eating because it's a beautiful day, it could look chaotic. So we wanted to make sure our parents understood what was going on our campus as well. So we kind of we phased in as the first semester, first few weeks of school went, and when we decided we were ready, we had a plan in place where the kids were ready, the teachers were ready, everybody's ready, and we pulled the trigger and we went. So that's kind of the process we used to get everybody ready.
One of the things that we had always done at our school was the first 2 days of school were built in as school-wide procedure days, and what we had done prior to the period of Power Hour was we normally had gone over lunchroom procedures and cafeteria procedures. And so what we did that first day, and we had as part of that rollout of those first 2 days being procedure days, every single teacher, period 1, everybody does the same lesson. Period 2, everyone does the same lesson. And they are, they're all about the different procedures that we have in the school and different things that have to do with bus transportation, whatever it happens to be, but just to kind of orient the students to school in addition to the orientation to that actual class that they're going to be in. But we did have that one brief period where we told them what Power Hour was and had a structured lesson on what Power Hour was and how to be responsible during that time. The other thing that we did was, just like Brad discussed, we had class meetings, and when we rolled that out, we rolled it out in such a way that that it was truly an academic rollout. I told the students that everyone in this room has straight A's today. You have straight A's. And I told them, get out your cell phones, text your parents, call your parents, let your parents know right now you have straight A's. And the students looked at me like I had absolutely lost their minds. And I was going, no, you do. You have straight A's. Tell your parents that you have straight A's. And the interesting thing about that was to look in the eyes of some students who no one had ever told them before that it would be possible for them to be academically successful, and then to tell them that we had created an opportunity, a fail-safe, that they would get the extra support that they needed so that they could maintain straight A's for the rest of the year. And then we turned that empowerment over to the students. And it was very physical, and you could see in that assembly students literally understanding that we were empowering them. When we first rolled Power Hour out, we didn't even call it Power Hour. We called it Lunch with Extended Possibilities. There's nothing sexy about that name. But by about the third or fourth day of school, the students had started calling it Power Hour, because it was their hour that they were empowered to be able to keep their grades up and to be academically successful and to be able to take more challenging courses because they would be more academically successful. And so I think that just as Brad experienced, I think that there's got to be that school-wide consistency, that rollout with that expectations. If you just tell students that they've got an hour to do anything they want, they'll fill that time, but not with the things that you and I might choose for them to do. Now, we had a couple of things that we do not have an open gym, and mainly because of that staffing of an open gym that would require people to be on duty, and our coaches, most of them are academic teachers as well, and they prefer to do the time in their academic classroom. And so we don't open our gym. But in talking with Brad, I can see that depending on your school and your staffing, that might be a really great time for students to be able to have that outlet that they don't have in a typical school day.
Yeah, and I think the great lesson learned there is that no one solution is a blanket solution for every school campus. I would challenge anybody that's here today that is really thinking about this for your school campus, or you're thinking about how to refine it, because I know a lot of schools are already using it, is to not box yourself into one model. Get out there and see a lot of different models. When Jane and I talked at length the other day, we found out just how different our vision of this was, but how some of the outcomes academically were the same. And so it just takes a little bit of research and knowing your students, knowing your campus, knowing your capacity for change, and your staff. I mean, there are a million ways to do this, and no one of them is right, no one of them is better. It's just what is going to impact your students. You know, less structure, more structure, gym, no gym. Neither one is better than the other one, but you just have to know your students and know your staff and know what is possible with what you have.
You know, one of the things that we did, because we did not schedule our students who were academically lower performing, we actually empowered the teachers to give the students a Power Hour with Purpose Pass, and that allowed them to basically schedule time with individual students. And that pass, it was a pink Power Hour with Purpose Pass. That pink piece of paper really lets that student know, wait a minute, I do have some place that I need to go for Power Hour because this particular teacher wants to see me. The other thing that we did to, again, empower the students is something that we did prior to Power Hour, and it continues to this day at Westport High School, is having student success chats with students who are not performing well academically, to really have them have a meeting with one of the school administrators and that teacher that they are not performing well, and then have the three of us come up with a plan that really gets the student to make a commitment to visit that teacher during Power Hour. So all of those things, again, we didn't have the structure in place, but what we did was, and it's been very successful for us, because it really puts that responsibility back on the student to make the right choice. Just a couple of our results you can kind of see over first year before we had 37% course failure, and immediately after the implementation of Power Hour, it dropped down to less than 4% and has stayed right at that 3% range. We also had our AP enrollment kept doubling. It was absolutely amazing to see that we could continue to double, and we added additional classes, we added additional courses, we added sections, we added students, but our AP enrollment kept growing because students felt that they could get that additional support that they needed with our AP teachers scheduling time during Power Hour in order to provide them with that support. We also have our dual enrollment program grew. We have dual enrollment right on our campus. Our students don't have transportation and they can stay right on our campus. We have adjunct professors that are also our staff members that help that. You can see our student activities went from right at 10% and stayed above 70%. Our referrals have gone down significantly, and then our graduation rate has continued to grow. And I know that Brad had some similar really positive results.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the results we had mirror the data that you showed as well. Same type of growth. Not quite as much growth in the student population. We stayed pretty consistent, but we, as far as the results academically and behaviorally, we saw a lot of the same results.
It seems to me when you give students that control over their time, we found that they really used it well. That we didn't get the calls from the parents who said, hey, you know what, I need for you to change my child's schedule because they don't have lunch with any of their friends. Well, that eliminated that. The teachers holding the other students back. We have all of our school business takes place during Power Hour. So that means if a student wants to buy a yearbook, if a student wants to buy a prom ticket, if a student has any type of business that has to take place, we even have it so that when our students come to campus, they go straight to class, but if they have a note from being absent or something like that, that has to physically go to a teacher or to an office, all that takes place during Power Hour. So it's eliminated teachers writing passes for students, students interrupting other teachers, that movement that you have during the school day when the academic content is really being delivered. You don't have any of those interruptions because all business is taking place by the students during Power Hour, and it also relieves the teachers. That teacher who sells yearbooks, that that they know that the students are going to come buy their yearbook during Power Hour. If there are forms, sign up for anything, all of that takes place during Power Hour, and it really has protected the instructional time during the rest of the day.
Yeah, we found out that the things that we were really worried about ended up being no concern at all. We were worried about student behavior. As soon as you give them some freedom, we worried as adults. How are they going to act? And we worried about trash, and we worried about, can we get all those kids in the cafeteria with only 2 lines and a reduced number of cafeteria workers? And none of that ended up being a concern. My principal saw me stressing over those things, and it ended up not being the concern. Our concern ended up being the kids loved so much what was going on. We had classrooms and common areas getting filled up. We had the teachers that were so excited over it, they wanted to figure out how to stretch it and offer more. And so they found so much value in that hour that all of our concerns got to be on the positive end of things. We had some concerns with getting students to tutoring and accountability and things like that, but mine are concerned to, when compared to all of the attention we had to pay to, okay, we love it so much, we want to expand it, now how do we grow and change it? So we got to put our energy there.
And I think that positive school culture that we found, because the students were belonging to something, even if it was Hacky Sack Club. And I would have never thought in a million years that we would have a club that was devoted to Hacky Sack. But you've got all of those students who find that their niches. We worried about, we had a large number of autistic students. We have 2 autistic units on our campus, and we worried about our autistic students and that opportunity for them to interact in a relaxed social environment has been extremely positive, and we would have never experienced it because we were worried about how those students would react, thinking about it in that typical lunchroom, very stressful period. Our cafeteria is oftentimes the only adults in the cafeteria for us are the people serving lunch, because the students come in, they get their lunch, they go where they're going to go, or if they're in the cafeteria, it looks more like and feels like a college cafeteria where students are eating their lunch, working on assignments, getting together with their friends, but it's constantly moving. The cafeteria, it's a constant feed. There is no rush, get everybody in, the bell rings, get them all out, get another group in. That whole relaxed cafeteria is so much better than the hour and 45 minutes that we would be on pins and needles in the cafeteria is gone, and that has been, the stress level for the students, having that time, they are recharged for the rest of the day, whether it is that they had to take a nap because they needed to, or they got their homework done and they are now more relaxed to go into the rest of the school day. It is amazing what that hour does for the students and the teachers and the administration.
And I'll tell you a thought that I had you talked about your autistic students. Our EC, which is our Exceptional Children's Department, they loved that time, that hour, because they found time in there to give service time, especially to our exceptional students that were consultative. They found maybe better time with those students to really sit down with those consultative EC students and provide EC services. So, as I was as we were really getting Power Hour rolling, they were talking about putting Power Hour into IEPs as far as service time, because those teachers were excited to be able to offer some of those services even more so during the school day.
And that extra support for students who need it is amazing. And I think oftentimes when we're trying to provide support for our students, we're thinking about students who need extra time. And our high-performing students, they need that time as well. If you've got a student who's taking a full load of advanced placement or dual enrollment or honors courses, they need that time as well, either to read, to work on assignments, to get together with their peers. All of that extra academic time really pulls together and creates a whole lot less stressful campus. One of the other things that we found was our students would come up with spontaneous student activities. I know that one day I went into an area we call the Den, and it seats I'd say about 150 people comfortably. It's a room adjacent to our media center that you can bring small and large groups into. And I walked in, and there were well over 200 students in this room. It's standing room only. And I quick checked my calendar on my phone as I'm walking through with some visitors to our campus. And there's nothing on the schedule. There's nothing that an adult has scheduled. Yet I see one of our students absolutely, without question, conducting a workshop on scholarships. And I turned and I went up to a group of students and I said, "Hey, can you tell me what's going on?" And they said, "Well, Josh put out on Instagram that he was going to conduct a seminar on scholarships, because we were all asking him how he kept getting all the scholarships, because we announce scholarships every day and we tell them the total that we have, and his name kept getting announced. So he put it out and students came in droves. It was, and they were all in rapt attention and taking notes, and he was sharing ideas and places that he had gone, and that idea that that student felt empowered enough that he could ask the media specialist if he could use the space, and drew in all of his peers, and it's amazing. We've had flash mobs of Thriller, the dance classes would come through and do things like that. It's our band, they actually performed their halftime show in our commons area, which was very loud and it was very tight, but it was so much fun. We have our orchestra perform, we have our theater students perform. They just choose to do those types of things in advance of a special program or maybe as an opportunity to practice. So there are a lot of other things that go on during that time that create that culture of, this is a great school. I'm really proud of the great things that are going on this campus. And we would never have anything like that if the students were being rushed through 30 minutes and not having that time where they could actually attend something. We have colleges come through and do workshops on financial aid, applications. We have people come through in our community that are interviewing for jobs, and they will do a workshop with our students on different jobs in our community. So it's become a time where we have mentors from our community that come in and mentor at-risk students during Power Hour. So it's become that time that not just for our school, but the community at large sees it as an opportunity that they can work with our students and give them opportunities for the future.
Yeah, we also found a lot of success with, we called it our seminar series, and it followed your same model: college speakers, military speakers, career technical. We even installed karaoke on certain days where we needed to fill some time, so some fun activities for some students. One of the great stories to me about our very first year in Power Hour is our football coach was one of the most popular figures in school, and the kids loved to be around him. But his schedule was busy with teaching his classes and then practice, and if you weren't an athlete or you weren't in one of his classes, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to engage with him, though the kids loved him and they wanted to. So he took great advantage of Power Hour and started the Outdoor Adventure Club. And these kids would take turns bringing in different camping and hiking gear, and then they planned a big camping outing where he had planned to take students halfway across the state and camp and use all this knowledge that they've been doing. So it was a great opportunity for the kids to really engage with some positive figures, positive adult models on our campus. The other thing I thought I'd mention that was a great benefit to us, we were a PBIS school, positive behavior support, and a lot of what we were able to do with PBIS was because of Power Hour. It allowed us the time for celebrations and for some of the things that are necessary to implement PBIS with fidelity on a campus. So again, that's one of our three tenets, the flexibility that it allowed us. But those are some of the neat things that happened on our campus.
Well, and I had I flashed up a letter. We've had, because we've had Power Hour for so many years, we've had literally hundreds of schools come and visit our campus. And those schools who have implemented the Power Hour, where it's had an academic rollout and that they've really empowered the students and not overscheduled the students. If you assign students, if you assign half of your students one lunch and half the other lunch, what you've done is you've just done two lunches. And we found that that's not been as successful as the schools who have empowered their students. And I know that a lot of you might have some questions for us, but I think that as we're in a time we're being really challenged to create more work-like environments for our students. And the feedback over the years, as students have graduated from high school, gone on to college, and gone into the workforce, the feedback that we've gotten from students, because we have had it for so long, is Power Hour prepared them for college. It helped them manage their time. It helped them to have positive relationships with professors, which enabled them. They knew what to do during office hours. They knew how to go and ask a an instructor for specific academic help if they were struggling. They knew how to use their time if they had an hour between classes. How do you get lunch? How do you squeeze in your work? How do you do that? Because they had gotten used to that pace and that rhythm of using time. Oftentimes our students go to college and they don't know what to do when there's an hour between two classes. How do they use their time? And that feedback from the students has been wonderful. And employers have responded to us very positively, saying that our graduates know how to use their time in the workplace. They know that if they finish their work, they know how to not to sit and wait for someone to tell them what to do next. They knew how to have that initiative to look for opportunities for things that they can do. And so we believe that Power Hour is helping us turn out a more college-ready student as well as a career-ready student, because our students, they are able to take those challenging classes and get that additional help and also be better employers. Excuse me, employees.
Well, Jane and Brad, thank you. I'm going to jump in here for a moment. We're about 5 minutes over, but I see that our audience is staying with us, so I know that there are some people who want answers to a few questions. Jane, I know you're still in control of the slides. Is there anything you want us to see before we go into questions and answers?
No, I was just trying to get to that slide that said questions. I think it's the next slide.
Well, I mean, there it is. I was able to do it, so somehow it came back to me. If you don't mind, we'll continue with Q&A for just a minute, and that way it'll be recorded, and anybody who comes in to watch this webinar in the historical database will get the benefit of hearing the questions and answers. And either of you can answer any of these questions. The first one is, do either of the schools have an advisory built into the system, and is it in some way replaced by this Power Hour?
Well, I'll go. We don't have advisory, and it's more as an organic opportunity for students to develop relationships with teachers and get the support they need, but we do not have an advisory period.
Mm-hmm. So it does perhaps take the place of it. Brad?
Yeah, we were exactly the same. We had an advisory, a 2-day-a-week advisory leading into this, but we agreed as a staff that wasn't serving the needs nearly as much as Power Hour. So Power Hour replaced it, and we found we were accomplishing what we did in advisory along with much more in the Power Hour model. So it replaced it.
Okay. The next two questions I'm going to combine into one because I think that it makes sense to. But part one is there an open campus, and then that leads automatically to part two. Can students leave campus to purchase lunch somewhere during Power Hour?
Our lunch is closed.
Oh, go ahead, Jane. I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's okay. Our lunch is closed. We don't have an open campus. Students say, and when you think about it, all your friends are there, and it does not. We did not have an open campus before, and so when we started Power Hour, we did not open the campus.
Mm-hmm. Brad, you want to add to that?
Yeah, we were the same. We did not have an open campus. We have a district-wide policy, as a matter of fact, for open campus, and we didn't see any problem. Once we started Power Hour, even with the lunch freedoms, we didn't see any problem with students trying to leave for lunch or anything like that. We saw an uptick in people getting things delivered for lunch, which posed a challenge, but we were also closed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question is there a requirement for a teacher or an adult advisor to be with clubs? And I think you've sort of answered this already with your example about the organic workshop on scholarships. But Brad or Jane, any other comments on that?
We had, as far as our clubs and activities went, yes, there was an adult sponsor, but not everything that occurred during Power Hour was a structured club or activity, just like Jane's organic experience with that. We had things that popped up, and students did those in common areas or public areas, and so there wasn't always a teacher right there with them for that.
And the last question
one of the things that you do have to get used to in Power Hour is that there are going, well, at least in our school, there are going to be hundreds of students that are going to be, they're going to be sitting in the hallway, they're going to be they're going to be in classrooms, they're going to be in commons areas, sitting, talking with their friends. You have to get used to feeling comfortable with literally hundreds of students that appear that they're not doing anything. But if you watch them for the entire period, you might see that they are only doing that for like 15 minutes. And then we ring a bell in the middle of our power hour, and our students will go to, they'll know, well, that signals the start of the second half, so I'm going into another place. But you do have, one of the things that you do as an adult have to get used to is students being on their own in public areas and knowing that they're going to be okay.
Okay.
You have to get okay with that as an adult.
One caveat to ours is we did have adults on duty. It started kind of with a lot of adults on duty, and then we realized we didn't need quite as many. So even though we may not have had an adult leading an activity, we had an adult in a common space. So if those of you that are asking these questions are concerned about student supervision like we were, I had students, I had teachers posted pretty much everywhere as far as the big common areas went, the cafeteria, the gym, our big common areas. So we did have adult eyes in everywhere that there were students, but they weren't necessarily leading those activities.
That's a great
Correct.
segue.
Go
ahead, Jane.
And we do have adults. We do have adults that are in the commons area, but I think just like Brad, you initially think that you have to have many, many more adults than you actually need. But when you see how the students are behaving, you don't need nearly as many adults as you think you might need.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a perfect segue to this next question, and that is, what do you do about emergencies or drills like fire drills that might, how do kids know what to do if something happens in the middle of power hour?
That's a great question, and I was also, along with this power hour, I was kind of the safety and security officer for our school. So you practice scenarios, and we practice scenarios with teachers, and then we convey those scenarios to the students. So we talk about that. We take time, and that was, I told you that there were some lessons built in at the beginning of the year. That was one of those topics that was covered. And we talked about, okay, if you're in power hour and we get a lockdown or we get fire alarm or whatever, we talked about some of those scenarios. I don't think there is ever a perfect solution to every scenario, because those situations, emergency situations, tend to be unpredictable, as we all know. Yeah. But we talk about it. We talked about it with the teachers, and the teachers in turn talked about it with the students on those opening days of school.
It's not any different than you would have during a schedule change or, a class change when the bell rings and you've got that 5 minutes if something were to happen. It's much the same. I think that one of the biggest issues that we had at the very beginning was what happens if a parent comes to pick up a child during power hour? What do you do? And we found that there was many of the students do have some type of cell phone or something, and we would just have the parent text the student, and then the student would come to the front office. Or students develop a routine, and you would be surprised within about the third or fourth week if a parent is coming for Billy Jones. Well, you know that this is Wednesday, and Billy Jones is in Miss Smith's class during this time of power hour, and you just call into Miss Smith's room, and if Billy isn't there, somebody knows where Billy is. So we found that it was not as challenging as we thought to be able to locate students quickly, and then as well as to convey to them that in case of emergency, just like you do, that's part of our first 2-day procedures is where do we go for a fire drill, what do we do in a lockdown? And I think that it is about educating and practicing those types of activities with students so that regardless of the time of day, they know what to do in case of emergency.
Well, great. Thank you both. This has been an extremely enlightening and lively discussion, and the questions that came in from the audience I greatly appreciate, and also the feedback everybody gave me when we weren't sure if everyone could hear. Thank you very much. I really want to convey my thanks. Someone just put onto the question board, thank you for sharing your success and enthusiasm. I'll reiterate that both presenters have said they get lots of visitors. There's their contact information. If you want to connect with them with further questions on an individual basis, that's how you get in touch with them. This webinar, like all NASSP webinars, will be on the website, and you'll be able to go there and listen to it again if you'd like, or pick up some details that perhaps you missed. And if you're one of those 2 or 3 unfortunate folks who said they were having sound problems, maybe you can go there and listen to the webinar complete with sound. I'd like to take the opportunity again to thank both of our presenters. We will be seeing for the first time ever a convention conference this coming summer, July 9th through 11th in Philadelphia. It is the National Principals Conference, and for the first time we're going to see NASSP and NAESP folks sharing that conference. If you want further information about that, you can go to the website to learn more about it. It's www.principalsconference.org. It appears at the bottom of the screen there. We hope that you'll join us in Philadelphia and be a part of that conference. And again, thank you, Jane, and thank you, Brad. You both have done a wonderful job this afternoon. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you for having us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Take care. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.